Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffrey Kennedy, author of Epic Fantasy Romance. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. Delicious. Today is Tuesday, and I say it in a pointed way for a reason. Tuesday, August 13th. Uh, no podcast yesterday, makeup podcast today. I could tell you a story. Yesterday just kind of the morning went to HE double toothpicks. I don't know. I'm in a mood today. I'm almost done with Reluctant Wizard. I should have it done tomorrow. I've got. Let's just see. Let's just see if that's true. It is true. I have to be done tomorrow. Yeah, I've got a little over 5,000 words to go. I can do it, right? You can do it. I think I can. I'm close. And then I have to do line and copy edits on Never the Roses. Turn those in by Friday. Been busy here. So yesterday morning, this is like a tangential thing, which is the brand here at First Cup of Coffee. How does I had somebody else, one of the writers on my mentoring Discord, said that she had grand plans for much creative progress, and then muggle shit got in the way. And that is a term that we often use. I can't remember who said that their friend introduced it, but it's like, yeah, sometimes the muggle shit gets in the way. Uh, the writing creative side being the magical part. So, yeah. Uh, so what happened yesterday was, many of you know I wear contact lenses and have worn my entire life, like since I was 10. I wore glasses for a year, and then my mom arranged for me to get contact lenses because I was a precocious and responsible child, and um, and she was and is a vain mother, and she totally bought into the fact that if I wore glasses, my social life would be ruined. Um, and I don't agree, but I don't disagree either. I was fine moving to contact lenses, so I wear semi-soft, rigid oxygen. They've changed the name over the years. Low, I've been wearing them for these many years, nearly 50 years now, right? Oxygen permeable lenses. So they're not the soft lenses because I have an astigmatism. And for all of you out there, and I've run into you in real life, who are like, why don't you just get the surgery? You know, everybody gets the surgery. Get LASIK. There are a lot of good reasons. One reason is that I am the perfect candidate for wearing contact lenses. Anytime I've brought it up with an optometrist, they're like, why would you get LASIK? You are the perfect contact lens wearer. This is the perfect solution for you. And 99.99% of the time it is. It works great. And just for, if any of you care, because now that I'm a woman of a certain age, someone used that with me the other day. I was like, what does that even mean? And they very earnestly explained, well, it means a woman who's older, but, you know, like still vital and all this. I'm like, I know what it means. Just like, why do we even say that? Of a certain age, as if we don't dare speak the actual age. Remember in St. Elmo's Fire, how Mayor Winninghouse's mother always whispers words that she thinks are too terrible to say aloud, like cancer. I feel like that's it. Like, we can't say this age aloud. And with my birthday coming up in a week, I don't know, 9 days. I'm kind of over it. And speaking of, I know I'm jumping around topics, but I got an early birthday present. Thank you, Assistant Corrine, for sending me this fabulous mug, which shall be added to the First Cup of Coffee rotation. It says Anatomy of a Maine Coon, and it does look entirely like Killian. And it points to various features such as, okay, so here we go back to contact lenses. So now I have different lenses for each kind of vision. My right eye is for distance vision for driving, and my left eye is for up close. And up close meaning the distance of the computer screen away. When we first went to this, they had my like up close being like, I don't know, a foot 18 inches from my face, and that did not work because I live my life at this where my monitor is, right? This is all I really care about. They have to do the distance for driving, and okay, fine, whatever. But like if I could only pick one, it would be I need to be able to see my computer screen. Therefore, now, which is ironic for someone who is a nearsighted person, and it's been very difficult for me to break the habit, right? You have this habit if you're nearsighted, which I'm tremendously nearsighted, like my one eye, I'm so close to legally blind. I'm that nearsighted. It's just not funny. Um, but when you're nearsighted, you become very close to bringing something as close as possible to see it. But with this lens correction, no more. So I have readers, which I'm putting on, my sparkly red readers, so that I can read what this mug says. Points to the ears, wispy selective hearing antenna. Um, XXL prototype, I think, is pointing to the cat itself. Chirpy transmitter, pointing to the mouth. Lion's mane, self-explanatory. V8 engine, going for that per motor. Zoom launchers on the back legs. Killian definitely has zoom launchers. Biscuit makers for the front paws. And pointing to the tail, ambiguous attitude noodle, magical endless fluff. So isn't that great? Thank you so much, Corinne. I love getting this mug, and a thoughtful choice and wonderful. Okay, so what happened with my contact lenses yesterday? I promised that I would tell this story, not that you care, but I got something in my left eye. And if any of you have worn contact lenses, you know that like once you get it majorly irritated, it takes hours to calm down. And I thought for a while I was going to be able to get it to calm down, but it wouldn't. And I teared up so much that I got makeup in my eyes, and I like my right eye started going because I was tearing so much. I had makeup in that eye, and my eye makeup was all smeared around it. And I actually took off all my eye makeup and thought, okay, I'm going to just redo my eye makeup once it settles down. And I put on my glasses for a little while and puttered around with some things, and it just was not going to settle down. So I just finally bailed. And yes, my mother already complained for all of you. So, and I promised I would redo today, and it's much better. Although this left eye is still a little irritated. So that's my life. If y'all hadn't made me go to doing YouTube videos, you would have gotten a podcast anyway. And I know a lot of you people are audio only, but if we're going to be on video, and I considered like doing a blackout video. I considered just coming on here without eye makeup and glasses. But apparently my mother's vanity lessons stuck too well, and I'm not going to do that. So, and it's my podcast. If I'm going to be putting my face on your screen, then I'm not doing it without makeup. So there. And yeah, people can yell at me for being performatively female, which has happened more than once. Anyway, so I already talked about almost done with Reluctant Wizard. The problem is that the ending has been like all fight scenes or kind of fight scenes, which I hate. There's one more. I think I know how it's going to go, and then hopefully we'll be done. Book releases August 27th. Thank you for all the pre-orders. You all warm my heart. I love it when I hit that point where I get enough pre-orders, and I only look at Amazon. So I get enough pre-orders that I can, that I know it's all paid for. My monetary investment is paid for. That's just the sweet spot. So thank you for helping me pay my mortgage. Always a consideration. I was having an interesting conversation with the lovely Vella Roth, who, let's see, I should be able to cite her books. I remembered without looking it up who wrote the is writing the Blood Grace series. Villa is an El Paso writer, lovely human being, and part of my mentoring Discord. And she was talking. We were talking about brainstorming because one of the other gals, I do a weekly check-in for progress. Ask people to check in on their progress, however small, because we have to give ourselves credit for doing the work, even if muggle shit gets in the way, right? I think that's an ongoing thing when we're talking about things like self-care. Charlie Book Rex, who I really like. Uh, sorry, Charlie. Sorry, Charlie. That's a generational thing, I bet. Uh, she's doing a lot of cool marketing advice things, but she was talking about. Actually, I want to grab what she said because it was very thoughtful. So her name is Charlie, and her handle on most platforms, I think, is Charlie's Book Rex. A delightful person. But she said, this year I finally learned that when people say self care and love yourself, it's not some goofy arcane concept, but actually the practice of listening to your body, meeting your own emotional needs, and giving yourself grace and time to process what you've been through and where you've been. If there's one single thing I could pass along to literally anyone, it would be that. Turns out they're not vague, crunchy bullshit concepts after all. And I love that. And longtime listeners know that this is something I've been myself learning over the years, trying to figure out what this means when people say, well, take care of yourself, be gentle with yourself. And yeah, that idea that it has to do with actually listening to your own emotions, prioritizing your own emotions, right? I think that's a huge thing, especially for women, where it's like uh, we we defer, we prioritize other people's feelings over ours, their needs over ours, and so listening to our emotions and then saying, I really can't do this. I don't want to. And no is a complete sentence. Not wanting to is enough reason to not do something, which should not be as revolutionary as it is. I mean, I think that for many of us, hearing that, thinking, well, I can't not do something just because I don't want to. Actually, we can. um, so yeah, the whole taking care of yourself, listening to yourself is it's a big thing. And while we are creatives, we in particular need to nurture that part of ourselves, which can be very fragile and can be subject to um, us not taking care of that. And I think it does help for many people to think about that as not necessarily taking care of yourself, but taking care of that creative aspect, which for many of us, we're earning our living with it. And so, yeah, you got to take care of that very sensitive creative self. And one way we can do that is by giving ourselves credit for the progress we make. And that's what's like, however small, and recognizing progress that doesn't always seem like progress. And I know that I'm militant on the only writing counts as writing, which is absolutely true. I stick by that. Only writing counts as writing because we can't kid ourselves that unless we're actually writing, it doesn't count as writing. But there are a lot of things that go towards writing that aren't writing that absolutely count and are important. And some of that is aggressively refilling the well. Some of that is um, being kind to that creative aspect, but also acknowledging the ways that we are making progress that may not be reflected in a rising word count. And that is, I know I am guilty of this, where I don't feel like I'm making progress unless I'm adding to word count, even if I'm editing. Yes, I know I'm a flawed person. I wrestle with this with myself. Uh, but what Vela Roth and I were talking about was one of the other gals in the group said that she hadn't been writing any words because she'd been on family vacation, but that she'd been volunteering to drive a whole lot on the family vacation, which has the dual benefit of her husband has to deal with the kids because she's the driver, which I think this is brilliant. And then it gives her time to think about her plot. And Vela came in and said, oh, yes, that she just loved driving time for brainstorming. And I asked, well, do you mean brainstorming uh, alone or with other people? And she said, well, I brainstorm on my own. So, Vela, I've looked up the definition of brainstorm because she asked, is this not what it means to you? And I said, no. And definition of brainstorm is a spontaneous group discussion to produce ideas and ways of solving problems. Uh, and that's a noun, verb, produce an idea or way of solving a problem by holding a spontaneous group discussion. The group was observed brainstorming about their writing. Um, so it's interesting to me on 2 points here. It does imply group discussion. I'm not sure I believe that you can brainstorm on your own, although I do think it's a sign of someone who is like a classically introverted writer that we think we can brainstorm with ourselves and our multiple voices. It's interesting to me that they include spontaneous, that it has to be spontaneous, which I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I wonder why they feel like it has to be a spontaneous discussion. I don't know, like as opposed to like a focus group or something like that, or maybe they wanted to capture that sense of it being like free flowing. But anyway, when I came back to Vela's question, and she said, isn't that what it is for you? And I said, no, for me, it's daydreaming. And to me, that's the solo activity. And she said that she loved that I called it daydreaming because um, it feels like daydreaming is frowned upon. And I think that's very true. And I told her that it was a tremendous realization for me, much, much later in life, that my bad habit of daydreaming was actually part of my creative self. And I think many of us who become professional creatives later in life, or maybe even earlier in life, but I think it's something that we build on as we go. We have to overcome some of that childhood instruction because a great deal of what we are taught as children runs counter to what we need to be and do to be professional creatives as adults. So all of those things that people said to us, our parents, our teachers, other adults, uh, and in a very well-meaning way, that they were instructing us on how to be productive members of society, how to be social, how to you know put on your eye makeup and all of that. uh, that they would say things like, get your nose out of a book. Rules like you're not allowed to read a book at the dinner table. I'm like, why can't I read my book at the dinner table? Because you have to make conversation with people, which is now a valuable skill for me, but not something I wanted to do. uh, Daydreaming, fantasizing, making things up, and I'm not one of those who goes with, like the writers who say, oh, it's great because I lie for a living. I don't believe that storytelling is lying. But I do think that when you are a child and you are wrestling with being held to accountability, like you can't lie about things and say, no, you didn't break that vase, because it's important to learn responsibility and accountability. But also the times that you are accused of lying about things that are actually part of being very imaginative, that kind of gets lumped in, right? You're taught that if you talk about um, a giant purple snail, that you are being untruthful. Whereas it might be, I remember I once saw a giant purple snail, and I can still see it in my mind, and I'm still not sure what it was. I don't know. I don't know. But I saw a giant purple snail, and I I absolutely saw it. Wherever that came from, whatever it was. But I took one of those tests recently on like, how imaginative you are. And it turns out, go figure, that I'm very, very imaginative and that I visualize things very, very clearly in my mind. I'm like very high end, like 98th percentile or something. So, like these things that are considered to be unproductive habits as children, we learn later in life as we become professional creatives that they're actually incredibly helpful. And one of those for me is daydreaming. Absolutely, that time spent daydreaming over the story, fantasizing about the story and the characters, that's progress. That's a big part of brewing the story in my mind and having it in there. Uh, and I do think one of the downsides of having our smartphones with us all the time, doing interesting things, having interesting messages from friends or little videos of things, of Olympics and so forth, is that that does erode the daydreaming time, right? I am a believer that the internet has been an overall positive for us, having lived for a good 25 years before we had it, and all this, and now 25 years after, more. Uh, but one of the things we've lost is that kind of boredom that leads to daydreaming, which is why driving is great for that. So that's something you could try if you want to encourage your creative self, feel like you are making some progress, even though you can't lay down words. If you're driving somewhere, um, just put on classical music or no music and just sort of let your mind drift over that story and enjoy it. All right. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you all on Friday. You all take care. Bye bye.